Open Mic!
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Coco, and this is WHAV's Open Mic Show. All right, you can watch and listen to the program for the next 2 hours in high definition with unstuttering audio at WHAV.TV. If you've got a computer or a smartphone, you just type WHAV.TV in your computer or smartphone. For the rest of you who are trying to watch the program, I notice it is skipping and stuttering and distorted at Haverhill Community Television, Channel 22. Chris, our producer, has called the station and suggested they turn down the sound. The sound is distorting. I would also suggest, if anyone there is listening, to stop doing, BitTorrent or other high-density downloads because it's affecting the stream. I just did a test on our end. We're sending full-quality audio without skips or technical problems. So hopefully someone is taking a look at that at Haverhill Community Television. But we are grateful that HCTV or HC Media is bringing WHAV's Open Mic Show to those without internet access. Our thanks go out to the board, staff, management, and members of all the cable television stations that carry WHAV. All right, so in that regard, you can also listen only at WHAV.net, again on your computer or smartphone, on AM radio 1640 in northern Haverhill, Plastow, and Atkinson, New Hampshire. And cable television, besides tonight, you can also hear WHAV on Channel 99. That is the education channel in Haverhill. You can also listen Methuen channels 8 and 22 on Comcast, channel 32 on Verizon Fios, Plastow channels 17 and 23, Sandown channel 17. All right, now typically on cable television, it's the audio behind those message boards you see telling you about the upcoming holiday fair or what have you. So you may not understand why there's some sound there, but that's what it is. Of course, the programs don't air when there are other television programs on. So again, high definition television on your computer or smartphone at WHAV.TV, low or no definition television, channel 22 in Haverhill. But again, we appreciate that they're making an attempt to carry the program. Apologize for any audio distortion you may hear. It's not on this end, it is down there. But in any event, thank you for joining us. This will be an open lines night, and there's so much to talk about. Haverhill's version of the Hatfield versus McCoy's fight, I'll explain in a moment. It's also a beginning of a new month, which means we're taking March birthdays and anniversaries. It turns out listener Brian is just so delighted that the people he has nominated for quite a few months now have coincidentally won when we draw it from the hat on the last Monday of the month. So call and wish someone a happy birthday, or a couple having an anniversary in March, and they could become eligible to win a free 7-inch cake from LBD's second-generation Italian bakery, 140 South Main Street in Bradford. So again, call 978-374-1900. just tell Chris, the producer who answers, that you'd like to wish someone a happy birthday or a couple a happy anniversary, as long as those are in March. And we'll go on the air. You just state your greeting, and we will put the name in the hat. Nothing could be easier. As the former host of Jack Bevilacqua of this show, Jack used to say, much better odds than the Powerball, so try it out. All right, anytime we bring up some discussion topics, you're also welcome to call. Matter of fact, encouraged tonight. Open lines, again, 978-374-1900. 374-1900 to get in on the discussion. If you're shy, you can't win a prize this way, but if you want to just pass along a note, you can email me directly at tcoco, T-C-O-C-O, at whav.net. There's also a message board, which I'll check right now, below the TV screen at whav.tv. If you've gone to whav.net, all you have to do is click the Tune In menu and click Watch, and you'll see. There's a couple of comments left over from last week. We'll try to clear those, so yours will go down below. Actually, Chris, I believe we also have another contest from Kimball Tavern Antiques. Can you bring me that? At the end of last week's program, wonderful supporters of the program, Kimball Tavern Antiques, corner of Salem and South Main Streets in Bradford, had a trivia question. If it's the way it usually goes, they're offering a $10 gift certificate, same as cash, to be used at Kimball Tavern Antiques. And, they really have done a wonderful job restoring that building, which was speaking of trivia, the birthplace of Bradford College. At a bar. Well, that's what college kids would say anyway, if nothing has changed. All right. Okay, here are some topics we might discuss tonight. We have Haverhill's version of the Hatfields versus McCoys, and that is this, frankly, surprising battle to fill the vacant school committee seat. This takes place tomorrow night beginning at 6 o'clock in City Council, Theodore Pelosi Jr. City Council chambers. Go to whav.net if you're not up to speed. You can read the story. I'll go over some of it with you now. But clearly, some very strong feelings on both sides. Very strong feelings that Sean Tuohy should be named to fill the vacancy since he was the next runner-up in the most recent election. Very strong feelings on the other side that it should be someone else, most likely former school committee man Raymond Serpina, former principal of Tilton School. Now, the bitterness on both sides is frankly a little alarming, very alarming, actually. We have two teams. Now, if Sean Tuohy ends up being seated on the school committee, as most think will happen, maybe short a vote or two. If he is short a vote or two, then that won't happen. But I just got a text at the same time. I am on the air. I'll try to check with texts in a moment. But you can hear it again. I turned it off, but it vibrates. You know how it is, folks. You must have gone to meetings if you've got one of these phones, and that happens. All right. Let me get my thought process right. So, the odds are that Sean will get the seat maybe by one vote. And the only people voting is not you and me, ladies and gentlemen. It's the mayor, all 9 members of the city council, and the 5 remaining members of the school committee. Now, on the other side, they've certainly done I'll have to give them credit. They've done a good job winning over some converts, and we'll see how that goes. And I don't know why someone is texting me about their dinner plans. All right. I just, it's one of those things. But in any event, so just bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just assume it doesn't matter. Either Sean Toohey takes the seat, Ray Serpina takes the seat, or 7 others who have submitted resumes. It doesn't matter. Let's just no matter what happens after tomorrow, what is the school committee going to be like in Haverhill? Chris has a photo of the Hatfields. The Hatfield, for those of you watching on television, the Hatfield-McCoy feud took place between 1863 during the Civil War and 1891. The 2 families of West Virginia, Kentucky area that have become known as what a bitter feud looks like. I don't expect any shootings, I hope, at the school committee, but what is of concern is that we have roughly half the school committee, no matter what happens, upset with the other half and vice versa. I call this, why can't we just be friends? I'd like to hear your thoughts. I mean, you can talk, whether you support Sean Toohey to take the vacancy, or if you support Ray Serpina, or if you support any one of the other 7. That's okay. You call with that. I'm not going to take any issue with those kinds of suggestions. Also, though, I'd like to hear your thoughts on whether or not this feud, and it's going to be one, believe me, this feud is good for the school children, is good for the city, is good for peace and quiet on every other Thursday. I'm afraid it's not. Now, let's look at the players. I'm going to, call them by teams. Maybe we should give them names. You want to suggest names for the teams? Do that too. 978-374-1900. Okay, Team 1, Mayor Fiorentini, who is chairman of the school committee, and alphabetically school committee woman Maura Ryan Ciatadello, and school committee president Scott Wood. That's one team. On the other team, Team 2, until you give me a better name, newly elected school committee members Sven Amarian and Gail Sullivan, and longtime member Paul Magliacchetti. Okay, these are the 2 teams. Now, if Ray Serpina or someone else comes in, then there will be 4 members on Team 2. And there will be 3 members on Team 1. If Sean Toohey comes in, there'll be 4 members on Team 1, 3 members on Team 2. Can they possibly repair this rift? I mean, it's bitter. WHAV News reported today, I'll just read you the lead, an intense political campaign is underway as February begins. Hillary versus Bernie in New Hampshire? Donald versus the Republican establishment in Iowa? No, it's the one to fill a vacant Haverhill School Committee seat, and voters won't directly decide it. Now, I've been reading what people are writing on social media, and they are, I believe, under the false impression that all of those who submitted resumes will be able to make a presentation at the special meeting tomorrow night, or that the public is invited to speak. I believe the rules they suggested, we're past the break time, the rules they suggested, it's like 13 rules, does not allow that to happen. Those who make a nomination, any one of the 15 elected officials who make a nomination may say a few words, and those who second those nominations may say a few words, but not the applicants themselves. If anyone has other information, let me know. But I would like to hear your views. I hope you can hear me with Channel's 22 sound problem going on. But in any event, we'll take a brief break right now. You're going to hear about this day in Massachusetts history on Mass Moments, and we'll be back with more of the Open Mic Show after that.
Open Mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
For more in-depth coverage of the news, visit WHAV's website at whav.net.
Catch the wave!
On the next Making Contact. Over 402,000 children were in the U.S. foster care system in 2013. Many of these children suffer abuse and neglect from their families, only to experience it again at the hands of people entrusted with their protection.
Sexual abuse, physical abuse, and emotional abuse happened when I was in the foster homes.
I have been on lithium, Depakote, Neurontin, Prexa, Risperdal, Haldol, Ativan, Prozac, Trazodone.
2 weeks before my 18th birthday, my foster mother told me that I had to leave.
On the next edition of Making Contact, we explore issues within the foster care system, from the high rate of teen pregnancy to the struggles of aging out.
Making Contact is heard every Wednesday night at 6:30. Remember, only local radio can bring you such compelling features, but only WHAV does.
Today is February 1st. On this day in 1844, G. Stanley Hall was born in Ashfield. In his long life, this farm boy from western Massachusetts would pioneer the profession and study of psychology in America. His career was marked by many firsts. In 1878, Harvard awarded him the nation's first Ph.D. in psychology. At Johns Hopkins University, he held the first professorship in the field and opened the first laboratory of psychological research. He trained most of the first generation of psychology professors and served as the first president of Clark University in Worcester. Among his many accomplishments during 30 years at Clark was bringing Sigmund Freud to the campus. In 1909, the founder of psychoanalysis delivered the only lectures he would ever give to an American audience. For more about G. Stanley Hall, go online to massmoments.org. This Massachusetts Moment has been brought to you by the Massachusetts Foundation for the Humanities.
WHAV Open Mic!
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
And welcome back to the Open Mic Show, a 50-year staple of democracy in the Merrimack Valley. I'm Tim Coco, your host. Chris Porter is producing in Master Control. All right. Number of topics that we could talk about. Open lines. Feel free to call in. I believe Jerry and Methuen wanted to discuss the water problem in Flint, Michigan. He's certainly welcome to do so. Maybe he'll do so later. We kind of give regulars titles, and Jerry, with his long experience at the Department of Environmental Protection for Massachusetts, is certainly well qualified to talk about the situation in Flint, Michigan, and how this could happen here. If you're not familiar with it, apparently changing the water source resulted in lead leaching from pipes and some widespread potential health issues in Flint, Michigan. All right. Speaking of those who contribute to the program, now I hope Safety Officer Dave is aware of the great impact he has had. All right, last week we raised, when Mayor Fiorentini was on the program, we raised Safety Officer Dave's concern about a lack of handicap parking spaces at Haverhill Stadium, and the mayor said he would support doing that. And then the prior week, new city councilor Joe Bevilacqua was on, and he also made a note of it, and he, in fact, has placed it on the Haverhill City Council agenda for tomorrow night. So this is how all of you listeners and viewers can have an impact. That's why we call it the Open Mic Show a staple of democracy. These are the real issues affecting real people and the quality of life in our city. And so it's very, very good that we have so many of you are devoted to raising these questions and comments. And you can see something is happening. So if Safety Officer Dave wants to call in and elaborate or comment on that, he's certainly welcome to do so. All right. Other issues that are before us, again, this Hatfield-McCoy feud, Haverhill version, which seems to be lining up with two teams on the school committee. I hope that they'll be able to shake hands no matter what happens tomorrow night and make this work. But I have a fear that we're going to be looking at generational bitterness. This is the kind of thing. Now, if you're wondering what this is all about and how this could possibly be this serious, I couldn't agree with you more. 3 out of 4 times since 1967, we've had a vacancy on the school committee. We had all 4 times there was a vacancy. 3 out of the 4 times they chose the next runner-up in the most recent election. One time, 1973, there was a special election, but the state says that was probably illegal. They don't allow it. Our charter, Haverhill City Charter, doesn't allow that. Now, there are no rules. So the other side that says we don't need to follow tradition is absolutely correct. There's no legal reason to name the next highest vote getter in the most recent election. A little confusing, but they are looking at possibly going to the next runner-up in the 2013 election. And a very, very respectable gentleman, Raymond Serpina, is up for consideration in that case. He's also placed his resume on file. Resumes, though, were optional. So it's just causing some bitterness. Today's story on WHAV, which you'll hear maybe part of it in a couple minutes on WHAV News with Dana Esmo. Today's story relates to school committee man Paul Magliacchetti's contention that 3 members of the school committee should not vote. He said, and I'm just off the top of my head, that Maura Ryan Ciardadello is Tui's sister-in-law, so she shouldn't be allowed to vote. Now, from a pure legal perspective, the State Ethics Commission says they're not blood relatives, they're not immediate family, so that she is allowed to vote. But if you can follow the concern they have that they're relatives of a sort. Now, the other issue involves Scott Wood. Scott Wood apparently has done some business with Sean Toohey. Now, when you live in, this is really a small town, folks, so we all do business with one another, what have you. But Scott Wood apparently has done some business with Sean Toohey, mortgage or real estate, I'm not sure which. And so Paul Magliacchetti says Scott Wood should abstain. All right. Scott responded today that he, too, has talked to the Ethics Commission, and because, he is neither an employer or employee, or that neither Sean Toohey or Scott Wood rely on one another or each other for income, there is no conflict of interest. And I think that one is probably one of the weaker arguments I've heard. Now, the other issue is Joe Bevilacqua, whose Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce has among its members Tui's business. So Paul Maglichetti thinks perhaps Joe shouldn't vote because he's head of the Chamber of Commerce, and Seaman and Tui Insurance is a member. Now, Paul uses for ammunition that, Joe has historically not voted on spending matters at the school committee because potentially a Chamber of Commerce member is a vendor to the city of Haverhill and the school department. So these are the issues we're hearing. But it has become so bitter that, again, whatever happens tomorrow night, I am concerned that we are going to have generational bitterness. This is the kind of feud, and we can put it on screen again, the Hatfield-McCoy feud. If you're just tuning in and not really familiar with it, this involved two families in the West Virginia-Kentucky area along the Tug Fork of the Big Sandy River. Well, it was a famous feud. There were shootings and all that. Let's hope it doesn't devolve into that here. But it just tells you that these things can become generational. They can become bitter. And so I would hope that no matter who wins tomorrow night at City Council, whoever is chosen to fill the vacancy on the school committee, that they'll all shake hands, do the kumbaya, whatever it is. I have a fear, though, that isn't going to happen. This has become very, very bitter. I'd like to hear your thoughts after the news, 978-374-1900. Don't forget, we're taking March birthday and anniversaries. The recipient can win a free cake from LBD's Second Generation Italian Bakery. I believe we have a trivia question that I didn't receive from Chris, so we'll see what the status of that is. But right now, listen to the local news with News Director Dana Esmo. Get your fingers on the dial, and we'll be back with more of the Open Mic Show.
Open mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
It's 7:01.
WHAV LP Haverhill. WHAV is a nonprofit community service of Public Media of New England, Incorporated.
Here's what's happening in local news. Haverhill police are investigating the circumstances of a city motorist involved in two collisions involving school buses moments apart within a Washington Street block, and as a result, he and four others were injured. According to a police accident report obtained by WHAV, a 2000 Subaru operated by Alcides Melendez, 68, of 16 Baldwin Street, Haverhill, quote, emerged from Porter Street and crashed, end quote, into a 2000 Hyundai traveling westbound on Washington Street, then continued westbound on Washington until Melendez's vehicle collided into the rear of a stopped city-owned 2011 Chevrolet school bus near 375 Washington Street. That vehicle, in turn, was, quote, forced into the rear of a 2009 Ford school bus owned by TransPro LLC Medford, which was also stopped in, quote, preparing to drop off students, end quote. Melendez and two passengers from his vehicle were transported to Lawrence General Hospital with unspecified injuries. The Hyundai's driver, Anita L. Rutherford, 55, of Haverhill, was, quote, uninjured on scene, but was later transported by family to Holy Family Hospital at Merrimack Valley after informing police, quote, she was in moderate pain and had concerns, end quote. The driver of the city-owned bus, Caroline R. King, 42, of Haverhill, was alone in that vehicle. She was checked by emergency medical personnel and refused further treatment. The other bus driver, Ruben Ventura, 52, of Lawrence, and four passengers on board were unhurt. Quote, Mr. Ventura stated that all passengers were still strapped into their child safety seats and no one in his vehicle was injured. EMS did check each passenger as well as Mr. Ventura, and no injuries were detected, wrote Haverhill Police Officer Dennis Moriarty in the report. Parents were contacted and advised of the incident before, quote, all passengers were delivered to their families. Police issued a citation to Melendez, according to the report. However, specifics were either not listed or blacked out from the report by the department. Except for the bus owned by TransPro, the other vehicles sustained either heavy or severe damage and were towed from the scene. An intense political campaign is underway as February begins. It's the one to fill a vacant Haverhill School Committee seat, and voters won't directly decide it. This battle, shaping up as Sean P. Toohey versus any of 8 contenders, but most likely former school committee man Raymond J. Serpina, is instead being waged in social media. This campaign is also not being managed by the candidates, but rather surrogates. Quote, Sean Toohey should be in that seat. I have 2 children in the Haverhill school system. I truly believe we need Sean Toohey on the Haverhill School Committee. He is dedicated to our city schools and has gone above and beyond with any issues brought to him, wrote Julie Cadret Demakis on Facebook. Quote, if going by their resume, the obvious choice would be Ray Serpina, who has the most experience of anybody, wrote Jeff Grassi on the Facebook page of school committee man Paul A. Magliacchetti. Magliacchetti started the conversation on his page by asking for input on his contention 2 members of the school committee and a city councilor have fatal conflicts of interest and cannot vote, quote, objectively and fairly as required by law, end quote. He said Mara L. Ryan Ciardello is Toohey's sister-in-law, Scott W. Wood Jr. is someone who does business with Toohey, and new City Councilor Joseph J. Bevilacqua heads the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce, where Toohey's business, Seaman and Toohey Insurance, is a member. Ryan Ciardello said she has already received clearance from the State Ethics Commission, which typically is concerned only with an official's, quote, parents, children, siblings, spouse and spouse's parents, children, and siblings, end quote. Wood, in a statement released this morning, also said the state has given him the go-ahead to vote. Quote, first and foremost, we are not business partners. We work for the same company in completely different roles. Neither one of us works for the other. Second, I have been in contact with the Massachusetts State Ethics Commission, and I have spoken with their general counsel, who has said that I do not have any conflict of interest, nor am I in violation of any state law if I vote, Wood said. Magliacchetti also argued for Serpina. He said Bevilacqua, whose former school committee seat is at the center of the dispute, quote, was chosen in the November of 2013 election. Taking Gail Sullivan out of the picture, the runner-up in Bevilacqua's 4-year term election was Ray Serpina, end quote. A special committee of the mayor, city council, and remaining school committee members are expected to name a replacement school committee member at a meeting taking place Tuesday, February 2nd at 6 p.m. More in-depth coverage can be found at whav.net. Remember, WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free. In the Edwin V. Johnson newsroom, this is Dana Esmill.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Priscilla Huff. The Zika virus has been declared a global health emergency by the World Health Organization. Laura Kontenkin reports from the United Nations headquarters in New York.
In an uncommon move, the World Health Organization announced the spread of Zika virus to be an international public health threat. The announcement is an indication of the growing problem since the outbreak was first reported in Brazil in May 2015. Urging for preventative measures to stop the spread of the virus, the agency's director, Dr. Chan, recommended pregnant women delay travel to high-risk areas and protect themselves from exposure. Laura Kantigan, New York.
Ahead of the first vote, which actually counts in the U.S. presidential race, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were leading in the polls. But now it's time for Iowa voters to caucus. Nick Harper reports from Des Moines, Iowa.
Donald Trump's final campaign event before voting starts will be at an evangelical church. A clear sign, despite leading in the polls, he wants to steal Ted Cruz's religiously minded voters. Cruz's Christian ideals make him particularly popular in this part of America. The Democrat race is tighter, and Hillary needs to hope Bernie Sanders' youth vote don't make it out tonight to vote. And she could be helped by a snowstorm due to blow through the state. Jeb Bush, meanwhile, appears to have already conceded defeat in Iowa. By the time voting starts, he'll be mid-rally in New Hampshire, the next state to vote for their candidates in just over a week. Nick Harper, Des Moines, Iowa.
Syrian government forces and rebels have clashed near a supply route into the city of Aleppo. It's the first major government offensive in the area for nearly a year, and it came as peace talks were trying to get underway in Geneva. Mimi Chehemen has more from the United Nations headquarters in New York.
The clash comes just 2 days after Staffan de Mistura, the United Nations Special Envoy for Syria, paid courtesy visits to both sides of the conflict. De Mistura first visited the delegation of the High Negotiations Committee, Syria's main opposition bloc, whose attendance at the talks has been of tenuous certainty. However, as de Mistura told reporters, any substantive talks would require both sides coming to the table. Mimi Chehemen, New York.
The man in charge of the U.S.-led coalition fight against the Islamic State says the mission to grind down and defeat the militants is making progress. Speaking from Baghdad, General McFarland said the 18-month campaign has seen successes in Iraq, but conceded Syria still poses a complex challenge.
The enemy is still strong in Syria, where we have no partnered opposition forces, and the situation along the Mara line remains fluid. We will continue to have good days and bad days for a while longer in that area. But overall, the trend, I believe, is going in the right direction.
The Taliban is claiming responsibility for a suicide bombing attack which left 20 dead outside the police headquarters in Kabul, with dozens more injured. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Wave weather.
I'm WHAV meteorologist Gary Best with wave weather. It'll become partly cloudy during the night, low temperature lower 30s. Fair weather on Tuesday, a bit cooler, about 42 to 46 with mostly to partly sunny skies. Clouds increase later Tuesday night, down in the low to mid 30s. And rainy and breezy weather on Wednesday. Rain could be heavy at times during the afternoon with high temperatures into the low 50s. This is Gary Best. Your next wave weather coming up in 30 minutes.
This spot could have been yours. Support WHAV's local approach with your underwriting. Go to WHAV.net and click on advertising to reach thousands of new customers. Stay informed each day with local news, coupled with FSN's worldwide coverage. WHAV LP Haverhill, the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free.
Catch the wave. WHAV. Merrimack Valley. Open mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco at whav.net.
And welcome back to the Open Mic Show, a 50-year staple of democracy here in the Merrimack Valley. I'm Tim Coco, your host, and Chris Porter is producing in Master Control. All right, those of you who are watching high-definition WHAV.TV on your computer or smartphone, you will have noticed perhaps a slight drop in your volume. We're going to try to actually under-modulate, somewhat technical term, so that perhaps the sound will improve on channel 22. We have very sophisticated, very expensive equipment here that holds the sound levels consistent and below the level where they would distort. I won't go into details, but apparently that's a problem over at HC Media to control their incoming sound. So we've reduced it artificially across the board. So some of you may have to turn up your volume if you're watching at WHAV.TV. Now, it's unfortunate, and this is not HC Media's fault, it's unfortunate that Comcast, the city's cable provider, does not provide high definition for PEG channels. That's public access, education, and government. So if you want to watch the Open Mic Show in high definition, go to your computer or smartphone, WHAV.TV, TV. If that option isn't available to you, hopefully we've compensated somewhat for the sound issues. We cannot control whether someone is downloading a large file at HC Media and therefore interrupting the internet there. That's how they receive the program from WHAV Studios in Ward Hill. All right. I've raised a number of topics I don't think anyone is interested in, so perhaps if you will keep that discussion open. If you'd like to comment on the school committee vacancy, for, against, what have you, particularly interested in your thoughts on whether or not you think this will result in a long-lasting feud that will affect the interpersonal relationships of members of the school committee. On top of that, Iowa is having caucuses right now, at this very moment, in fact, and perhaps you're rooting for a candidate, Republican or Democrat. Let me know. Right now, I don't know that we have any polling data, but we might have. Right now, the big battle seems to be on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders. Polls did show Hillary had a slight lead going into the Iowa caucuses. And on the Republican side, it looked like Donald Trump, the Donald, had a lead over Senator Rubio. So perhaps you'd like to chime in on that. Open lines tonight. WHAV's Open Mic Show 978-374-1900. I had printed out the whole list here. So Democratic side, Hillary Clinton, Martin O'Malley, Bernie Sanders up in the caucuses. Now, Iowa does things a little differently. Some states do, because these are really party races. These aren't official races, so the parties are choosing their candidates. On the Republican side, again, Trump has a narrow lead over Ted Cruz, but other Republicans are Bush, Carson, Christie, Carly Fiorina, Jim Gilmore, Mike Huckabee, then we'll just go down and down. Kasich, if I'm pronouncing that right, Paul, Santorum, and maybe you have a favorite in that group that you'd like to discuss. All right. Well, we're going to go to Community Spotlight in a second, but let's first get a call in. Chris, do we have a call? All right. You are on the Open Mic Show.
I'm a call.
All right, so this is the person. If you know Brian, make sure you send him a greeting card with your birthday listed, because Brian has submitted the winning entry for quite a few months in a row. How many has it been, Brian?
6.
6? 6 months in a row. So
I don't want anybody to think it's rigged.
It's not.
And last week, the mayor drew the winning entry.
That's not even just me. It was the mayor who drew the entry last week. But so, like I said, of course, Brian's luck won't last forever. So be sure, if you're not on Brian's birthday card list, at least call in and wish someone a happy birthday or happy anniversary. So we have another month now. We're doing March birthdays and anniversaries. Brian, do you have someone to recommend for a free birthday cake from Albides?
Yes, I do.
All right. Who do we?
Yes, I do. So I'm going for 7.
All right, going for 7. Let's see if Brian's luck holds out here. Okay. What is it, a birthday or an anniversary?
It's a birthday.
All right. Happy birthday to whom?
Brittany.
Brittany. Is this the famous Brittany, the singer?
No.
Oh, all right. I thought Brian has improved his friendship list. All right, Brian. So Brittany's birthday is when? Do you know?
Brittany is in. So we'll see what happens. And
right.
It's a short month because one of the Mondays is a holiday, right?
That's right.
And that would be, what, 2 weeks from tonight?
Do you know the date of Brittany's birthday?
I believe it's the 29th.
Was this a leap year?
You know what? Go on.
We're going to
No,
create
no,
a new rule now.
We're talking about March birthdays now, so
Oh, that's right, March. That's right. We didn't. That's right.
you know, to make sure people realize that it's March birthdays and anniversaries.
You know, actually, Brian should host the show. I'm forgetting my own rules here. That's right. We're a month ahead, so March birthdays and anniversaries. I didn't even think of that question during the February birthdays. All right, so Brittany, March 29th. Well, Brian, while I have you, because no one else wants to talk about this, maybe it's too controversial, but I'll hit you with it. All right. Are you at all concerned that this rather bitter division, I think it is, between the TUI forces and the anyone but TUI forces is going to create some problems in the working relationship of the members of the school committee?
There are always going to be problems no matter what, no matter who fills that seat.
No, and that's actually my concern. I mean, maybe we could get everyone to agree to shake hands afterward and maybe submit nominations for birthday cakes. I don't know what. No, it isn't.
Yeah, maybe Brittany should take the seat on the school committee.
Oh, actually, yeah, she didn't submit a resume, did she? It's not required, by the way, so she could get her name to one of the counselors or school committee members or the mayor.
See, I don't know a lot of these people. I don't have any kids in the schools. You know, maybe I should pay more attention to school committee. I just haven't.
No, I understand, and we all understand that, and it's just one of those things. All right, now, did you hear the Kimball Tavern Antiques trivia question last week? I'm going to see if I have it. A famous musician read The Devil and Daniel Webster, is that correct? And was inspired to write a song. What is the name of the song and the group that performed it? You wanna digest that for a while?
Yeah, I mean, there's something familiar about it too, but
yeah, I'm not quite sure we have it written down exactly right. But famous musician read The Devil and Daniel Webster. Was it a book? Yeah. All right, and it was inspired to write a song. What is the name of the song and the group that performed it? All right, folks, you could win a $10 gift certificate to Kimball Tavern Antiques by answering that question generously provided by the folks at Kimball Tavern Antiques, corner of Salem and South Main Street. Brian, you must have all this down by now. Why don't you tell us about Kimball Tavern?
Well, Kimball Tavern Antiques, located at the corner of Salem and South Main Street in the Bradford section of Haverhill.
Yeah, okay. The Bradford
offers a wide variety of antiques and Haverhill-oriented memorabilia and all sorts of things.
All right, folks. I hope the Woods have heard your commercial for them. It's technically not a commercial. You didn't do a call to action, and that is exactly what the rules require. So that's good. All right. Anything else on your mind, Brian?
Oh, different things. Like I'd like to come up with some more fundraising ideas for you and for me.
Oh, for both of us. We could do a joint fundraiser, one for WHAV and one for Brian Langlois' fund to replace. So no new leads to replace this $30,000 that you lost.
No, they're not even looking at it now. So.
All right,
they've gone as far as they can, and that's that. But there is something, though, that's been bothering me, and it does involve the city of Haverhill. And it does involve the Haverhill Commission on Disability Issues.
All right, Brian, what is that again? We're correcting our question.
About the Haverhill Commission on Disability Issues.
Okay. What are you proposing?
Well, it seems that the city is insisting that I hold a seat on that commission.
The city is insisting
that I actually am on that commission, and I say I am not.
I would think that your decision is final, but how do you feel about it?
The deal is this. I mean, I never sent in a letter of resignation, and this is the way it goes. In December of 1997, I began a job with the city of Haverhill, full-time, funded partly by the Commission on Disability Issues and partly by the City of Haverhill itself. And I was informed back then that I'm off the commission. The reason being for an apparent or actual conflict of interest.
All right.
Well, okay, fine and dandy. So I was off the commission. And then when I was laid off in August of 2003, well, I deliberately didn't try to get back on the commission again because I didn't want some politician saying if I got called back to work, which never happened, that there's a problem with ethics or something.
So the conflict was that you actually had a job in the field.
Right.
All right, but then you didn't, so someone said you're back on, and you said, well, wait a minute, isn't that up to me to decide?
Well, they're saying that now. They're saying now that they put me back on the commission after I was laid off, and I don't agree with that. I was never notified. I was never sworn in or anything like that. I mean, I continue to provide assistance to the commission. You know, back in the days when I would volunteer, I would go to the meetings, even though I was laid off. I would take minutes.
Oh, so you were ex officio, as they say.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Just kind of a volunteer, and then I didn't vote. I wasn't allowed to vote.
All right, well, okay, that makes sense.
Former Governor Deval Patrick got a bee in his bonnet about ethics training. I was not allowed to receive that ethics training because I was not on the commission. Now they're saying I'm on it.
All right, so what are you going to do about it? You're going to just go back?
I don't know. No, I can do more off the commission than on.
All right. Well, see, Brian's a good community servant, folks. So, and
But
obviously,
I don't like the idea of them saying, well, we can't have X number of people put on the commission because you're still on it.
I see. All right.
Sounds like a game to me.
All right. So, I obviously going to have to raise this with someone. All right. Well, we wish you the best of luck. We know that you're a good community servant either way, and whether you're a voting member or just a contributing member, I think it's good for the city. So, whatever you decide makes good sense.
Right. Well, they keep on saying that I should send in a letter of resignation, and then I say I can't resign for something that I'm not a member of in the first place, and that's where the argument is.
Now, who's asking for the letter?
The commission.
Okay. All right. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure you'll handle it and give us an update on how that goes.
Sure.
All right. And then
And so far as David goes, I don't know if our safety consultant is listening now or not, but I was listening last week when the mayor was there, and then I remembered that David said that he had contacted the mayor's office.
well, it's now on the city council agenda, so I think it's a resolution is well underway no matter what happens. So that's congratulate Dave for bringing that issue to everyone's attention. All right, Brian. Well, we certainly appreciate your call, appreciate your entries. We'll see whether or not, I imagine you might even have others later this month, but we'll see whether or not your success.
Well, I'm not expecting any others this month.
All right, so you've got all your birthdays in. Okay, folks, you have a chance now. Nominate someone whose birthday is in March or a couple whose anniversary is in March, and they could win a free 7-inch cake from Albee D's second-generation Italian bakery, 140 South Main Street in Bradford.
And I had the good fortune over the weekend of having some of that cake. It was the chocolate cake that one of the winners brought to my house.
Oh, really? Okay. So that's the other thing, folks. A good strategy. Always call in a prospective winner that you know so that you can get a piece of that cake. So, Brian, have you had both the vanilla and the chocolate by now?
No, just the chocolate.
All right,
That's
folks.
all I've had. And in addition to that, prior to the cake, I had some of LBD's meat pie.
Oh, LBD's meat pies. Now, actually, I have a
I've
list
heard
of those.
good things about it, And I tried it on Friday, and it was great.
Okay, it was a meat pie.
Yep.
Not even on my list. Okay. So now, do they have, the crust all the way to the bottom, or is it just on the top?
I think it was all the way to the bottom.
That's my favorite kind. Now, some people say, well, all those extra carbohydrates, but what does it matter when you're enjoying a nice treat like that? All right, Brian. Well, thank you very much for the call. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk about some fundraising ideas.
Sure.
All right?
All right.
All right, have a good night.
You too.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much, Brian. Okay, all right. We're going to take community spotlight break, and then we'll do weather in about 5 minutes. How's that, Chris? All right, we'll be back with more of the Open Mic Show after this message by Mark LeMay.
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
For live and local talk, listen to the Open Mic Show Monday nights. You can also see the program at whav.tv. WHAV, the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free.
Catch the wave!
You've been told everyone can succeed if they just put in the effort. You're doing that, working more than one job, but you still find yourself falling further behind. What happened? This is Professor Richard Wolff. My weekly economic update puts your struggle in perspective. It discusses the forces holding you back and what you can do about it. Listen Friday nights at 7 p.m. right here on WHAV. WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free.
Community Spotlight.
Volunteers are being sought for Haverhill's annual Earth Day cleanup Saturday, April 23rd from 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Volunteers will meet at the Citizens Center, 10 Welcome Street at 8:30 for a briefing and to pick up trash bags, snacks, t-shirts for groups. Participants are being asked to bring their own rakes and sturdy gloves. For more information, contact Dave at 978-374-2388, extension 28. Someone you know is on WHAV. To submit or read your own nonprofit announcements, click on the Contact tab at whav.net or email news@whav.net. In the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, this is Mark LeMay.
WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
All right, this hour of the Open Mic Show is being brought to you by the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council. Smart companies choose the Merrimack Valley. Now, normally that starts after the weather, but I'm running behind as usual, so we'll just start talking about it a little earlier. All right. We've cleared the message board at whav.tv if you want to make a comment there, and I can read that on the air. And you can also email me directly if you're shy, tcoco, TCOCO, at whav.net. Still would like to hear from you. I realize some of you are struggling with the skipping, the popping, the distortion on Channel 22. I assure you there are no problems like that on this end, but you can also try, if you'd like, whav.net for audio on your computer or smartphone. You can also, and there's a little player on the top of every page. You just click play, pretty simple, and you can listen. Or you can go to WHAV.tv or click on TuneIn and then watch at WHAV.net, and you can watch high-definition television on your computer or smartphone. Other kinds of topics that we could talk about tonight. Do you have a child at Tilton School, or perhaps you went there yourself? A very, very positive report before the school committee last Thursday about great progress being made, turning around the grades at that school. They're a level 3, which means there's some room for improvement, but they are in fact working on that. The new principal, Bonnie, apparently has made great strides. Perhaps you want to talk. It's one of the more popular stories at WHAV.net today, so perhaps you want to talk about that. You know, that does remind me, it does bring us full circle back to Ray Serpina. 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago, all of the candidates for school committee and city council and mayor, for that matter, were on the open mic show, and I asked every candidate about the Hunking School project. I asked them, were there going to be any other surprises? Because the new Hunking School also replaces not just the Hunking, but it also replaces the Greenleaf. So it begged the question, are there any other older schools in Haverhill that might need attention? And out of all the people who spoke, I believe the only honest answer I received was from Ray Serpina, who said essentially the Tilton School is a disaster. One of our oldest schools, I think he said there were 600 students there, and that it does need attention. And I always worried that perhaps because he was so honest about that, that the voters didn't want to hear the bad news and kind of shot the messenger. So, you know, there are ways we can link a lot of these topics together. If you want to comment on them, I really would appreciate the call, since otherwise Chris has to hear me all night. 978-374-1900, 978-374-1900. I mean, perhaps you're like David Gouds, who just want to criticize my tie. Well, that's fine, too. We can have some fun. All right, a couple of trivia questions before we go to local weather. All right, we've kind of corrected our trivia question here. A famous musician watched The Devil and Daniel Webster and was inspired to write a song. What is the name of the song and the group that performed it? Answer that question correctly. We do have the answer, right? Because sometimes that's the worst part. I don't know if you're right or wrong. You could win a $10 gift certificate, same as cash, to Kimball Tavern Antiques, corner of Salem and South Main Streets in the Bradford section of Haverhill. Also, still time, as a matter of fact, for the next few weeks, March birthdays and anniversaries. Wish someone a birthday who's having a birthday in March, or a couple that's having an anniversary in March. We'll take their name. Chris will take your name, their name, the recipient's name, and you just announce it on the air, and they could win a free 7-inch cake, choice of vanilla or chocolate, from Albidi's second-generation Italian bakery, 140 South Main Street. And you just heard Brian. You know, I have a whole list of things they offer: pastries, pies, desserts, sweetbread, specialty cakes, pizza, cookies, mini pastries. But Brian mentioned meat pies, and I guess I haven't been paying attention when I was there. So we should take a look at that. It actually is listed here under the pizza section. A slice of meat pie, $4.95. So I wonder what a full meat pie costs. All right, so that's very interesting. Perhaps one of you knows the answers to that. 978-374-1900. We can discuss school committee. We can discuss the Iowa caucuses. We can discuss your favorite topic, whatever it is, right after local weather. We'll be right back.
Open mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
It's 7:37.
This is Pacifica Radio for the Merrimack Valley, WHAV.
Catch the wave!
This is Tom Hartman inviting you to tune into the Tom Hartman program on WHAV every weekday beginning at noon. I'm here 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, taking your calls live and providing all the news you need to know. The Tom Hartman program is your media support group for We the People. Again, please join me weekdays beginning at noon right here on WHAV. Remember, only local radio can bring you this progressive talk opportunity, but only WHAV does.
Wave weather!
I'm WHAV meteorologist Gary Best with wave weather. It'll become partly cloudy during the night, low temperature lower 30s. Fair weather on Tuesday, a bit cooler, about 42 to 46 with mostly to partly sunny skies. Clouds increase later Tuesday night, down in the low to mid 30s. And rainy and breezy weather on Wednesday. Rain could be heavy at times during the afternoon with high temperatures into the low 50s. This is Gary Best. Your next wave weather coming up in 30 minutes.
Open mic!
From the Edwin B. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
This hour of the Open Mic Show being brought to you by the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council. Smart companies, choose the Merrimack Valley. All right, open lines tonight, 978-374-1900, 978-374-1900. All right, the big kickoff to the 2016 presidential election starting right now in Iowa. Call me. Let me know who you would like to win, either on the Democratic side or the Republican side. Polls suggest that Republican Donald Trump has a narrow lead over Ted Cruz, but both are well ahead of all the others, and there are plenty of others, from Jeb Bush to Christie to Carly Fiorina to Jim Gilmore to Mike Huckabee to Rand Paul. I mean, there are all just so many on the Republican side. And then on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton was projected to have a slight lead over Bernie Sanders. If those polls hold to be true, it would be Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and then Martin O'Malley. I believe I read today that Bernie says no matter what, Bernie Sanders, no matter what, that he is going to stay in the race until the Democratic convention this summer. Hey, do you have a thought on this? Maybe it's really too early for all of us here in Massachusetts, but New Hampshire is going to be going to the polls soon, and we have our good friends at UMass Lowell, which is opening a Haverhill campus. UMass Lowell's 7 News tracking poll of 1,400 New Hampshire voters who were surveyed about next week's February 9th Democratic and Republican primaries. This is what they're saying. Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Bernie Sanders are leading in polling of likely voters in their respective primary races. Trump by 26 percentage points and Sanders by 31. Now, that makes sense for Sanders. Vermont is a neighboring state. Trump really surprising all of the folks out there that he's not a traditional or historic Republican, but maybe there's a story here about both Trump and Sanders. They are sort of the outside candidates. Bernie Sanders has long run as an independent in Vermont, but he has always caucused with the Democrats, so he's always had some association with the Democratic Party. His big issue is income inequality, saying that for the past 30, 40 years, we've seen the average middle income person's income drop, while the rich, the 1%, have taken about all the money, at least the new money in the economy. Maybe you have a thought on that. Okay, looking at some specifics of the UMass Lowell poll, Trump leads the field of GOP candidates with support of 38% of likely Republican primary voters surveyed. Ted Cruz is second with 12%, followed by Jeb Bush and John Kasich tied at 9%, Marco Rubio at 8%, Chris Christie with 7%, Ben Carson and Rand Paul with 3% each, Carly Fiorina, the former HP CEO, 2%, and Rick Santorum at 1%. Over on the Democratic side, for some details, Sanders has the support of 61% of likely Democratic primary voters polled, compared to 30% who favor Hillary Clinton, 1% for Martin O'Malley. Kind of wonder why Rick Santorum and Martin O'Malley stay in their races with 1%. Sanders' support's bolstered by young Democratic primary voters. We're looking at ages 18 to 29, 89% of whom prefer Sanders to Clinton. Clinton polled best among older voters, 65 and up, but still trails Sanders by 4 points, 43 to 47% in that group. Does it concern anyone that Bernie Sanders describes himself as a socialist, a democratic socialist? Now, he has explained that is nothing more than what Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Lyndon Johnson, Eisenhower, and Kennedy were. The democratic socialist is not the Soviet form of communism, but rather it is people who favor Medicare and Social Security and certain safety nets. Does it concern you at all that title socialist is there? I think maybe Bernie would be better off to have dropped it, but he didn't want to change his, didn't want to look like he was running from it. But Social Security, there's the social right there. That's what socialism is. Our highway system is socialist. It's provided by the government for everyone. Our water and wastewater, if you're on the city system in Haverhill, is socialist. It's provided by one source for the many. That's what socialism is, but it's still maybe a scary term to some after the Cold War. Maybe you have a thought on that. I certainly welcome any calls. I hear one ringing now. Hopefully it'll rescue me from talking about all of these things. And of course, we might be finding out what's going on in Iowa. Let's see if we have any data yet. I think we may have had an update on the news, and we'll look for more of that, Iowa results. But perhaps you have a thought on that. Chris, can we take a break for a movie review this hour? We're going to hear Take Two movie reviews. By the way, I'm going to give you a sneak preview. Next Monday, we're going to be getting a review of Joy, the film that was made in Haverhill, partly, but I don't think that's on our schedule for this week. So we'll be right back with more of the Open Mic Show and your calls after this.
Open Mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
Last year, WHAV helped local nonprofits by airing nearly 10,000 community spotlight messages. WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free.
Open Mic!
Every Monday night, the Open Mic Show brings interesting guests into your homes, presents your take on current events, and dabbles in little-known local history. I'm Tim Coco, your host, inviting you to join the chorus of community voices beginning at 6:30 Monday nights right here on WHAV. You may also watch this 50-year staple of democracy live at WHAV.tv and Haverhill Community Television, Channel 22. The Open Mic Show was brought to you by Northern Essex Community College, the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council, and WHAV member. Remember, only local radio can bring you this talk opportunity, but only WHAV does.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Light at the End of the Tunnel. For victims of the Catholic Church's decades-long child sex abuse scandal, director Tim McCarthy's new movie Spotlight might seem like the kind of vindication they could never have hoped for. The film takes its name from the semi-autonomous so-called Spotlight team of investigative reporters at the Boston Globe who helped unravel the snarled cover-up in the early 2000s. The description procedural is sometimes used derisively in film criticism, but that's what this excellent movie is. It pedantically follows the Spotlight team, played straight on by Michael Keaton, Mark Ruffalo, and Rachel McAdams, with the protection of their editor, Marty, Liev Schreiber, as they conduct interviews from which few details are omitted and search records, sometimes needing to go to court for the privilege. There are few side plots involving the protagonist's outside lives or individual character studies. Energy that might have been spent on this is more wisely directed at systems analysis, the failures in various bureaucracies, specifically the Catholic Church, area civil authorities, and even the media that allowed the abuse to continue for so long. One line of dialogue from early on in the film sums this up. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to abuse one, too. A modicum of suspense is provided by the what did he know and when did he know it issue with respect to the longtime Boston area cardinal. No spoilers here, though you might remember this outcome from CNN. It is mentioned in postscript, and it isn't terribly satisfying, though it might be telling. The A-list actors here portray the determination to cover the truth that we like to associate with the Fifth Estate. They do it here with humility and humanity, and we get to come along, sharing the satisfactions and frustrations as Spotlight illuminates the unthinkable. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin B. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
This hour of the Open Mic Show being brought to you by the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council. Smart companies choose the Merrimack Valley. All right, I don't have much coming in on the Iowa caucuses just yet. Let's go to the telephones. You are on the Open Mic Show.
Good evening, Tim. This is Greg.
Hi, Greg. How are you?
Good.
You know, Greg,
I want to give you a little bit of a take on the presidential campaign thus far.
Oh, good. Finally, I said something that someone wants to talk about.
No. I'm kind of interested. I think one of the things that I'm looking at the candidates here, Trump. I hate to say it, but it's going to anger some Trump supporters, but I think he's going to fizzle. I think I don't believe this momentum is going to carry. Also, a lot of the delegates are not elected by primary, but they're done in smoke-filled rooms, a lot of the delegates.
Well, that's right, especially the superdelegates, which are basically party bosses, right?
Yep. And I think what you're going to end up with, the Republicans are going to have a brokered convention.
Yeah, that's maybe bad for the country because people are always suspicious of those things, and we really haven't seen one in many years, have we?
Years, right.
It's very interesting because in the old days, folks, no matter how you voted, it didn't matter. The party bosses picked. This happened, actually, Franklin Delano Roosevelt's last vice president. No one expected Harry Truman to be vice president. The party picked him.
Yeah.
Because, actually, and you know why, related to my earlier topic, because his name escapes me now, they thought he was too much of a socialist, which he was.
John Nance Garner?
The one after that.
Well, the one before him was Henry Wallace. And
I'm getting confused. Henry Wallace was a socialist.
Garner, who was replaced because they thought Garner was too old.
Oh, that's interesting because All right, I'll have to go back and review my
Maybe
history.
I'm wrong.
But Wallace did run himself later directly as a socialist, didn't make any kind of mark.
No, in 48, there were 2 third-party candidates. There was a third and a fourth-party candidate in 48.
And that's why everyone expected Harry to lose, right?
Yeah, well, Tom Dewey and was a Republican. Truman was the Democrat. Strom Thurmond ran as a Dixiecrat, and he picked up a lot of electoral support in the 48 election.
All right, so
States.
we give our regulars titles, so I'm going to make you our political analyst, historical.
Well, not that much of one, although my major was political science.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
All right.
Suffolk University, the same folks that do the poll taking.
All right, so okay, that's interesting. So you think Trump will fizzle, and even if he doesn't, the party isn't going to let him take the nomination?
I think so, because I think what they're also afraid of, the Republicans, you'll notice Mitch McConnell made some comments the other night about not voting for Trump. And the other thing that I think about, I think the Republicans themselves fear Trump, not because he's an outsider, but if he becomes a radically polarizing force. There are a lot of Republican Senate seats up for grabs this fall. And right now, the Sabato polls say 50 Republicans, 47 Democrats, but then there are 3 that are up for grabs.
Okay.
Which means if there's a 50-50 deadlock, whoever gets the White House is going to determine who controls the Senate for the next 2 years.
Oh, very interesting. Now,
and I'm also thinking if Bernie Sanders were elected, I don't know how they fill Senate vacancies in Vermont, but the current governor of Vermont is a Democrat. His term expires at the end of 2016. So if Sanders were to go to, let's say, for instance, he were to be elected to the White House, then his successor would most certainly be a Democrat.
Yeah, very interesting. What do you think of? What do you think about the question? Is socialism still a scary thing, or that Cold War meanings don't mean much to the younger voters?
I don't think Cold War meanings mean a lot, but I mean, the country has definitely been on a path towards socialism. I mean, since the days of Franklin Roosevelt, when was Social Security implemented? 1935?
That's right.
And Medicare was implemented in 1964?
Yeah, Johnson, the Great Society.
Johnson, yeah, Harry S. Truman had Medicare card number 1. He was trying to push that through since 1950. And I think we're seeing the reason for what is now called Obamacare or Romney Care, as it were, Romney Care gone national, some type of health insurance program, national health insurance program. I think a lot more people want it than don't want it.
Yeah, what do you think about the current system versus, say, single payer, which is Medicare for all?
I think I'd like to see involvement, the private sector heavily involved, although single payer is economically a good way to go, but I just don't know if we're going to get the service with the private sector being knocked out of it. I think what we've had to do is put pressure on the private sector to bring medical costs into line, particularly the insurance companies to bring medical costs in line.
Yeah, I don't know what the experience was of maybe your employer, but I do know that after Romney Care and after Obamacare, the premiums for our insurance here at this office actually leveled off, and I think one year actually went down.
They've leveled. My company has leveled.
Yeah, so maybe there's some pressure is built in now.
Yeah, we don't have where I am, I'm in the private sector for a large software company, and obviously we don't have a Cadillac, what is called a Cadillac plan, and I think the only people who have Cadillac plans are those with strong unions.
Or Cadillacs.
No, not necessarily, because the way the Cadillac plan works is if your company spends for a family plan more than $30,000 a year in the plan. And those are usually the plans that have no deductibles, unlimited service, that type of thing. And
I
the
see what you're
government
saying.
wants to stop that because as much as you have to pay a deductible, I know this angers some people, but It was long learned. I worked in the biotech sector many years ago for about 8-9 months. Our company president was a gentleman who was a physician from that was then called the Federal Republic of Germany, West Germany. And he left the practice of medicine because he couldn't make any money. He was in like the 58% tax bracket.
I see what you're saying.
And the government was saying it, and he said, one of the things that we have learned, that the United States is learning as it proceeds on a path to socialism, that the European countries did not deal with at first, is that if the consumer of healthcare services, meaning you, me, whoever, doesn't have to pay, if the only way costs can be contained is if the consumer pays part of the cost.
Well, no, I suppose that's a good
that
point.
Way you're going to audit the bills.
Because you make a really good point. Because one of the reasons why maybe we still have so many people getting primary care at the emergency room,
right,
is because someone was paying for it or no one was paying for it.
Yeah.
But when you have you've got to pay. Myself, I have to pay $15 to visit my doctor, $20 if it's a specialist. So I suppose I don't.
You have it good, Tim. I have to pay $25 and $40.
Oh, gee. Well, I guess I'm doing okay. But it's still one of those things where you say, well, wait a minute now. Then I got to pay for parking in Boston. It's pretty expensive to go to the doctor, so I'm not going to run in because I cut my finger. I mean, I'll take care of it myself.
Well, I'll give you an example. About 6 years ago, I had chest pains. I was at a football game in Boston. I was at Boston College. And I went down to their infirmary at the stadium, and to make a long story short, they took me to the hospital in an ambulance. I spent the night at St. Elizabeth's. They put me on the monitors, and 3 o'clock the next afternoon, they discharged me. I hadn't suffered a heart attack, but they recommended that I go in for a stress test to my primary. And I said, I don't want to do it here. I want to go home, and I want to go to my primary care guy later in the week. But when I got the bills back, they filled a complete folder.
Really?
And it took me 3 weeks to go through those charges. Some of them were legitimate, and some of them weren't.
Wow, so you were kind of crammed.
And I had to audit all of them, and I just went through, and I would spend like 3 hours on the phone with people at the different hospitals and clinics, and that, okay, is this valid? Is this not valid? What is this for? If you can't tell me, I'm not going to pay it. And I went through this, and it took me, I'd say I spent about 7 or 8 hours on the phone. The most interesting one of all was didn't want to pay for the ambulance ride because I had already received that service once that same day.
Oh, I see.
Now, as far as I saw, I only took one ride to the hospital in an ambulance. Now, they did have the opportunity, and they said, well, about paying. What about, well, I said, well, they did have the opportunity. There was a drunk in the lobby of the hospital who wanted to go back to the football game, and this wasn't like New York where you get in a cab in New York and go to New Jersey and they have to collect double the fare.
Oh, right.
You had an opportunity to take a fare from the hospital back to the football game. There was a drunk in the lobby that wanted to go, and they wouldn't let him go.
That wasn't you, right?
It wasn't me. No.
Okay.
So they said, oh, okay, we'll pay for that, and I went through all these things. Now, another one, this is going way back in time. My father-in-law and my mother-in-law, who have both passed away, but my father-in-law received a bill, but it was paid entirely because he was on one of these Cadillac plans, $4,000.
Wow.
For surgery for my mother-in-law, the surgery took place, according to the medical provider, in October 2001. There was a teensy problem with that.
Really? What was it?
My mother-in-law had passed away 6 months before.
Oh, okay, wow.
But the insurance company just said, well, what the heck, we'll pay it anyway.
All right, so...
And these are the things that...
So we're wasting money institutionally. So the institutions themselves are wasting money, and you took it upon yourself to try to fix that.
Well, he took it apart himself, but you are being forced to fix it because you're going to be given a bill for services rendered. And you have the opportunity to go over it and scrutinize it and square it away if something's wrong on there.
I have to admit, I get those little statements after I've been to the doctors or something saying that our insurance company is just confirming that you had this appointment and that this was prescribed or what have you. I have to admit, I kind of just glance at it. I suppose I should pay more attention now that you mentioned this.
Yep. Likewise with generic versus non-generic drugs. I'm on generic medicine, maintenance medicine. I have to follow the terms of my health care plan, which means now I have to have them filled by a mail order.
Really? That's required of you?
Huh?
That's required of you?
After the third one, yeah. So otherwise they don't pay. So they have a company, my insurance plan has a company called, well, I can mention their name because Express Scripts, I have to register with them, have my PCP fill out the form, send it off to them, and I get my medication in a 3-month supply with at the same rate that I get now, $4 or $3.75 a prescription per month.
Well, it's funny. One of the things I noticed, we have to take a break, I'm afraid, but one of the things I've noticed myself is that I don't remember when it was, 2-3 years ago, where they started requiring me to get 90-day supplies.
Yep.
And it was actually cheaper.
Yep.
And I had no objection. Why would I? And this means I don't have to go to the pharmacy every month. So I guess the system is trying to find efficiencies.
Yes.
You've obviously found some flaws in that model.
Well, in the past, but
it does sound like I don't want to criticize your employer, but you seem to have a lot more work than I do in administering your health care. So maybe that's just coming soon for me. I don't know.
It may. I don't have that much to do, but it's just that what I have is middle of the road. It's not a Rolls-Royce plan. It's not a Cadillac plan. What I have is a Buick plan, which is fine.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Anything else on your mind before we go to news?
Nope.
All right. I do want to thank you, by the way. Folks, Greg called me the other day, and maybe this happened to you. Some of you received your WHAV membership renewal, and there seemed to have been a mix-up with the envelopes and the letters. So if you got the wrong letter, obviously you got the right envelope because it was delivered to you. I would appreciate your renewal anyway, and we may follow up with that. But, Greg, you weren't the only one. So thank you very much. All right, I think we can close that call. Let's go. We're going to go late, obviously, to local news, but you listen carefully to Dana Esmel, our news director, on some updated local news. We're going to hear from FSN. Maybe we'll get something on the Iowa caucuses. Not seeing anything on my screen in here, but maybe it's still a bit early. So we'll be right back.
Open mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
It's 8:05.
WHAV LP Haverhill. WHAV is a nonprofit community service of Public Media of New England, Incorporated.
Here's what's happening in local news. Haverhill police are investigating the circumstances of a city motorist involved in 2 collisions involving school buses moments apart within a Washington Street block, and as a result, he and 4 others were injured. According to a police accident report obtained by WHAV, a 2000 Subaru operated by Alcides Melendez, 68, of 16 Baldwin Street, Haverhill, quote, emerged from Porter Street and crashed, end quote, into a 2000 Hyundai traveling westbound on Washington Street. Then continued westbound on Washington until Melendez's vehicle collided into the rear of a stopped city-owned 2011 Chevrolet school bus near 375 Washington Street. That vehicle, in turn, was, quote, forced into the rear of a 2009 Ford school bus owned by TransPro LLC Medford, which was also stopped in, quote, preparing to drop off students, end quote. Melendez and 2 passengers from his vehicle were transported to Lawrence General Hospital with unspecified injuries. The Hyundai's driver, Anita L. Rutherford, 55, of Haverhill, was, quote, uninjured on scene, but was later transported by family to Holy Family Hospital at Merrimack Valley after informing police, quote, she was in moderate pain and had concerns, end quote. The driver of the city-owned bus, Caroline R. King, 42, of Haverhill, was alone in that vehicle. She was checked by emergency medical personnel and refused further treatment. The other bus driver, Ruben Ventura, 52, of Lawrence, and 4 passengers on board were unhurt. Quote, Mr. Ventura stated that all passengers were still strapped into their child safety seats and no one in his vehicle was injured. EMS did check each passenger as well as Mr. Ventura and no injuries were detected, wrote Haverhill Police Officer Dennis Moriarty in the report. Parents were contacted and advised of the incident before, quote, all passengers were delivered to their families. Police issued a citation to Melendez, according to the report. However, specifics were either not listed or blacked out from the report by the department. Except for the bus owned by TransPro, the other vehicles sustained either heavy or severe damage and were towed from the scene. At least one Haverhill School Committee member has declared the Level 3 Tilton Elementary School is, quote, on the rebound, following a progress report on efforts to, quote, stabilize the environment and improve the academic standard, end quote. A presentation at Thursday night's meeting from first-year Tilton principal Bonnie Ankoviak highlighted newly released statistics showing academic improvement due to, quote, changes in instruction and programming at the school, among other things. 5 months into the school year, according to Ankoviak, student attendance has increased each month compared to last year. Decreases in the percent of students falling under a warning category in math and reading courses, as well as upward shifts in needs improvement, proficient, and advanced categories. She said, among other measures, more help will be coming with math through an intervention program funded in January by the Department of Education.
Because we're a Level 3 school, we got a grant funded in January. All of our teachers, every single one of them who teaches math, are starting to be trained next week in pathways and pitfalls. It's a Tier 1 and Tier 2 intervention. This intervention, once it is taught, will be able to have in the grant extended learning time before school or after school with our students who need it. So we are going to give those students the extra push they need this year with extra time.
School committee man Paul A. Magliochetti, who placed the update on the meeting agenda, said after his latest tour of the school during the week, he found, quote, something really special, and enthusiasm from the leadership. While he agreed with Ankoviak more time for further achievement is needed, he believed the school was, quote, headed in the right direction.
I was amazed. I mean, all the fresh paint and everything was pretty good. I mean, you really made that school look like a welcoming environment to get the kids energized, and it's one of the cleanest schools I've been in. I don't know how you're doing it. Some of these increases are pretty phenomenal. I mean, 31%, 22%. I mean, these are very impressive numbers. So, like I said, I do believe that Tilton's turned the corner. Now it's a question as to when we can get them up to the levels where they should be.
More in-depth coverage can be found at whav.net. Remember, WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free. In the Edwin V. Johnson newsroom, this is Dana Esmill.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Priscilla Huff. The Zika virus has been declared a global health emergency by the World Health Organization. Laura Kontankin reports from the United Nations headquarters in New York.
In an uncommon move, the World Health Organization announced the spread of Zika virus to be an international public health threat. The announcement is an indication of the growing problem since the outbreak was first reported in Brazil in May 2015. Urging for preventative measures to stop the spread of the virus, the agency's director, Dr. Chan, recommended pregnant women delay travel to high-risk areas and protect themselves from exposure. Laura Kantigan, New York.
Ahead of the first vote, which actually counts in the U.S. presidential race, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were leading in the polls. But now it's time for Iowa voters to caucus. Nick Harper reports from Des Moines, Iowa.
Donald Trump's final campaign event before voting starts will be at an evangelical church. A clear sign, despite leading in the polls, he wants to steal Ted Cruz's religiously minded voters. Cruz's Christian ideals make him particularly popular in this part of America. The Democrat race is tighter, and Hillary needs to hope Bernie Sanders' youth vote don't make it out tonight to vote. And she could be helped by a snowstorm due to blow through the state. Jeb Bush, meanwhile, appears to have already conceded defeat in Iowa. By the time voting starts, he'll be mid-rally in New Hampshire, the next state to vote for their candidates in just over a week. Nick Harper, Des Moines, Iowa.
Syrian government forces and rebels have clashed near a supply route into the city of Aleppo. It's the first major government offensive in the area for nearly a year, and it came as peace talks were trying to get underway in Geneva. Mimi Chehemen has more from the United Nations headquarters in New York.
The clash comes just 2 days after Staffan de Mistura, the United Nations Special Envoy for Syria, paid courtesy visits to both sides of the conflict. De Mistura first visited the delegation of the High Negotiations Committee, Syria's main opposition bloc, whose attendance at the talks has been of tenuous certainty. However, as de Mistura told reporters, any substantive talks would require both sides coming to the table. Mimi Chehemen, New York.
The man in charge of the U.S.-led coalition fight against the Islamic State says the mission to grind down and defeat the militants is making progress. Speaking from Baghdad, General McFarland said the 18-month campaign has seen successes in Iraq, but conceded Syria still poses a complex challenge.
The enemy is still strong in Syria, where we have no partnered opposition forces, and the situation along the Mara line remains fluid. We will continue to have good days and bad days for a while longer in that area. But overall, the trend, I believe, is going in the right direction.
The Taliban is claiming responsibility for a suicide bombing attack which left 20 dead outside the police headquarters in Kabul, with dozens more injured. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Wave weather.
I'm WHAV meteorologist Gary Best with wave weather. It'll become partly cloudy during the night, low temperature lower 30s. Fair weather on Tuesday, a bit cooler, about 42 to 46 with mostly to partly sunny skies. Clouds increase later Tuesday night, down in the low to mid 30s. And rainy and breezy weather on Wednesday. Rain could be heavy at times during the afternoon with high temperatures into the low 50s. This is Gary Best. Your next wave weather coming up in 30 minutes.
Community Spotlight.
What do the telephone, Bartlett pear, and a fire extinguisher all have in common? Their inventors all had Haverhill connections. Buttonwoods Museum homeschool programs presenting Eureka, Haverhill Inventors, exploring historic inventors like Alexander Graham Bell and Dr. James Nichols, and creating some new inventions. The class takes place Tuesday, February 9th from 10 until noon at Buttonwoods Museum, 240 Water Street in Haverhill. Homeschool programs are open to children ages 4 to 12. The cost $5 per child. Spaces are limited. Pre-registration is required. To register, email programs@buttonwoods.org by Thursday, February 4th. WHAV is the only FM station assigned to the city of Haverhill. The sooner you contribute at WHAV.net, the sooner WHAV signs on at 97.9 FM. Just look for the photograph of Tom Bergeron, honorary chairperson of WHAV's Make Waves campaign. This is Pacifica Radio for the Merrimack Valley. WHAV LP Haverhill. Listener-supported community radio.
Catch the wave, WHAV, Merrimack Valley. Open mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
This hour of Open Mic being brought to you by the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council. Smart companies choose the Merrimack Valley. Special thanks to Chris Porter in Master Control for fielding the calls, keeping the video on, adjusting audio, doing all the things he does. One of the things Chris does best is he watches the meters. We don't overmodulate and we don't undermodulate. All right, let's go right to the calls. I believe we have Jerry from Methuen on the line. Are you there?
Yes, Tim. How are you tonight?
Very good. I believe you gave us a heads up. You gave me a heads up that you'd like to talk about the water situation in Flint, Michigan.
Well, I can really assure you that there are no Flint, Michigan situations in Massachusetts. Not to my knowledge. We take the lead and copper rule very, very seriously, and
Actually,
out there were so many mistakes made. Really.
Do you want to explain to the listeners what the problem is in general?
The copper, the copper lead, it's a rule. It's an EPA rule, and all the communities in the United States, primarily all the states, they accept what's called primacy. In other words, they agree that they're going to implement and enforce regulations relative to the Safe Drinking Water Act, which was passed many years ago. And one of the portions of the act has to do with the copper-lead situation. And communities are supposed to monitor for that every 3 years. I think you'll be seeing that change to almost every year in the future. And the community is supposed to pick out a reasonable amount of sampling in critical areas, schools, public buildings, and also and collect results. Collect lead and copper samples, and they have a set of standards for the lead is the most important of the two. Very, very toxic. It causes delay in reading. These kinds of children's diseases.
Now
and the lead is really cumulative. You never can get rid of it once you have it. And it all started in 2014 when I guess Flint was placed in receivership, and they thought that they were going to save money. So instead of using the good water from Lake Huron through what's called the Detroit Public Water Supply, they were buying their water, an interconnection from Detroit, which was treated water from Lake Huron. Instead of using that, they decided to use the common river that was within their boundaries, the Flint River, and that was a big mistake, really.
All right, now
there's everybody out there, including EPA, Region 5, all have to be culpable. They all have a responsibility here.
So in order to save money, they used a water supply that had the effect of leaching the lead from the pipes.
Exactly. In Massachusetts, we are really serious about corrosion control and have been for many years.
And you would know, you were with DEP.
And that's why I say that you won't find any Flints in Massachusetts. Well, not to my knowledge, anyway. I can't remember a situation this bad. Well, maybe one, the leukemia case in Woburn. But as we did, and we always have did, immediate response. We don't, we take action the day that we see the results. When you pick a new source for water supply, generally,
skincare,
you're required to do what's called a pilot study, and otherwise you set up a small system and withdraw the water and look at it for coagulation, removal of the bacteria, etc., and also corrosion. In other words, a pilot study to my knowledge, they didn't do a pilot study, and they didn't have any corrosion control, as we do here in Massachusetts. And so, as a result, already, Tim, five people have already resigned, including a big wig from EPA, big wig from the Region 5, the EPA.
Now, some would argue that this cost savings is part of the larger problem in this country.
It is
about the wealthy controlling our infrastructure, and those in government who support that philosophy.
It could be a heads up, couldn't it, Tim?
Yeah, I mean,
it could be a heads up that well, in my own community, Methuen, it's well known. It's well known that we have cast iron pipes in there that are 80 to 86 years old. You know why, and I'll tell you why. You put a pipe in the ground. There's no ribbon. There's no ribbon cutting. You know, there's no dedication. It's not like a public building or something like that, a swimming pool or a new city hall or whatever. You put the pipe in the ground.
It's not very sexy, right?
It's not very what?
Not very sexy.
Not very sexy. Doesn't get votes. You know, people don't see pictures in the newspaper of the alderman and the mayor putting their blessing on the new cast iron, the new pipeline in the community. And if you took a look at the water that they're supplying to the populace, it's brown from this situation with the pipes. And then in addition to that, the water in the Flint River has 20 times more corrosive than the water coming from Lake Huron. So it was a major mistake in switching off a small cost savings of a little over $1 million, and it's in that section of Flint, Michigan, with all minorities, and so obviously there's other issues besides just the just the health of the people that were taking showers and drinking it. I could have told them 2 weeks ago that these filters that they were putting in were not going to work. They just got blinded. And in fact, there are studies been shown that these kinds of filters, when they become loaded with iron, as they did in Flint, can be of a danger of growing all kinds of diseases. In fact, they have, as a result of this, they're attributing 6 or 7 cases of Legionnaire's disease. It's really heart-wrenching.
Have you heard of the author named Naomi Klein?
No, I haven't.
She wrote something called the Shock Doctrine, and what her contention is that those who favor a more conservative government, hands-off, take advantage of crises, in this case taking advantage of the poor financial condition to suddenly do a shock doctrine. So in other words, they find ways to create savings that harm the regular population.
That's right. In this particular case, that's exactly what happened.
They tried it actually in Iraq. It actually happened in Iraq. Once we occupied Iraq, we dismantled all the structures and implemented the shock doctrine so that we could form Iraq in our own image. And that hasn't worked, has it? Because
it hasn't.
Now ISIS has taken over.
We've lost a lot of lives.
All right. So, Naomi Klein, viewers and listeners might want to check out Naomi Klein's The Shock Doctrine, where she says it's all part of a larger plot. And she can document that. So we take advantage of a crisis to change our political system. And it's a little bit worrisome, and it looks like this may have happened in Flint, Michigan.
And, the ironical thing about this situation is GE in the past has used Flint, Michigan, the Flint River, as a source of water supply, like the community has. And they found that the water in the Flint River was so corrosive that their parts were rusting. So what I'm saying is, the only company in Flint, Michigan, that still has water that still had water coming from Lake Huron was General Motors. Isn't that something?
Very interesting. So it's not even good enough for the corporation, but it's good enough for the average person.
Yes. They have gone back immediately when this situation, when it was the due diligence of two groups, one professor from Virginia Tech, and the other was a doctor who has a practice in Flint, Michigan, taking blood samples of children and seeing really high concentrations of lead in the patients.
And yet,
then the other was Professor Mark Edwards from from Virginia Tech, who did monitoring and sampling and showed very, very high levels over the lead requirement, lead regulation.
And of course,
my hats go after them. But before this is all over, there's going to be more than 6 or 7 people fired or resign.
No, you're absolutely right. Well, Jerry, I guess we're out of time, but do appreciate your insight on...
Next week, I'll bring forward what happened at tonight's meeting at the Methuen City Council. That's kind of very important. A piece of legislation was passed, and I'll be happy to relay to you and the listeners what really happened there at this council meeting tonight.
All right. Well, I'd like to looking forward to that analysis, and I'm sorry that we ran out of time. But
thank you very much.
But thank you very much for your call, Jerry. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. All right, folks, that will do it for the Open Mic Show. Now that we're off Channel 22, maybe I can rant for a moment that, I was talking to someone, several people actually, and who've said that TV people don't understand sound. They don't watch for it. They don't regulate it. That is, watch the meters. In our industry, we call it riding gain. You watch it, but you also have something called limiters and compressors in our studios and in radio stations in general that guard for how the audio goes out. Apparently, that is not something that's commonplace in public access community television. I don't know. Maybe they would allow us at HC Media to send someone over there and show them how to watch their meters. But in any event, we'll hopefully take this up next week. We'll see you then on the radio.
Open mic!
Join Tim Coco live on the Open Mic again next Monday night at 6:30. The opinions expressed on the Open Mic Show are not necessarily those of WHAV, its underwriters, or affiliated stations. The Open Mic Show came to you from the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom.